Okay, been a while here. I was waiting on some tools. I bought a 60-degree 14mm wrench, but that's not going to work because it doesn't fit in here. There's just not enough clearance. So I bought a 14mm ratcheting wrench. That doesn't fit in there either. Alright, continuing with the rear motor mount here. In episode 5 we went over enlarging the holes, but when it comes to assembling this, it's not quite as simple as just putting it on here, because all these cases are going to be different by little bits here and there. So here's part of the assembly. If you look at your Sickbikeparts instructions, you'll see this little piece here is going to go on first. And then as a first step, they tell you to use both of these shims. These are the thicker ones. All right, so both of those go on there. And then this is going to go on top like that. Okay. But the other thing you have to be careful of is this area here. This is the back clutch cover screw. The kit gives you a couple of screws like this that are extra long. They need to be extra long because that screw is going to go through this hole here. But before that happens, you need to build up this area here with a couple of washers. Now for me it worked out the correct spacing is going to be these 2 washers. They give you all this in the kit. There's going to be shim washers in here. Alright, so you have these brass colored ones. 2 of them together is just about the size of one of these. For me, it looks like 2 of these is going to be pretty good. So that's just there for support. You know, you don't want this part being able to move. So, but as you can see, maybe you can't see. This does not fit. I'm going to have to grind away a little bit of this cover here so that I could get this washer on. So that's what I'm going to do now. Get my Dremel out and carve away a little bit of this case. Oh, off camera too, I had done some other stuff off camera. I took my Dremel and I kind of beveled this a little bit. I needed to make some clearance here to get this mount on. It wasn't fitting down in here, so I had to grind it flat. So yeah, you're probably not going to just put this on, right? You're going to have to make adjustments. You're going to have to either have a Dremel or some files in order to make the right clearance for this to get on there. But for now, I'm going to get out the Dremel and I'm going to make some room for my washer. So I'm going to use this, I'm going to try this same barrel-shaped cutter that I used before. I'm just going to come down right here and I just need to cut a little radius there. Okay, I'm gonna want to do something else now. I'm gonna take a black marker and I'm gonna mark this part that I'm not cutting, so when I get down there I'll be able to see. If I start to remove the marker, I'll realize that I've gone deep enough. I still got quite a ways to go, but let me get this marker and we'll add that in. This will just help for when I get close. It's not down all the way. I've got a little bit more off on this end than I do here. There's not much there, but I'm going to just try and gently even that out. Okay. All right. So that fits on. It's got a little bit of room to wiggle, so that should be good enough for that. I'll take a ball end in there and just clean this up a little bit, just because. But really, that's going to be covered by the mount. It's never even going to be seen. But I'll just clean it up a little bit, make sure there's no sharp edges, try and smooth it out a little some. So this cuts on all sides here and the bottom. Going over it with several grits. So 440 and a bit of water. No one's ever going to see this, but I'll just feel better knowing that it's not hacked at, that at least I made an effort to clean it up. Okay, so this plate goes on first. Now they give you 4 of these shims. These are a couple of thinner ones here, but they tell you in the directions to start with these 2, and then if you need a little more, you can add another 1 or 2. Now it goes on. And then I am using the longer of the 2 screws that they give to replace this one clutch cover screw. Is that the washers that's keeping me from... It's a little snug. There we go. Yeah, I mean, your results may vary. I had to take a lot of this surface off of the back of this clutch cover to fit this on. Well, not a lot, but I had to grind it down. I just did a little at a time, you know. You want to do a little at a time and check it. So this is going to go on here like that. The washers are keeping this snug. And then on here is going to go a lock washer. So that's going to end up going on here. Okay, been a while here. I was waiting on some tools. I bought a 60-degree 14-millimeter wrench, but that's not going to work because it doesn't fit in here. There's just not enough clearance. So I bought a 14-millimeter ratcheting wrench. That doesn't fit in there either. Okay, so I'm gonna have to enlarge both sides enough that I can get this ratchet not only in here side to side, but I got to get enough clearance to get down on top of it, tighten it, come up, and get out again. But I don't want to take off any more than I have to. I need to get close to the bottom without bringing up the bottom too much. This is a tight squeeze here. There's not a lot of room. Ugh. Can I get a file in there? Just trying not to take metal off this bottom piece. As you can see, it's pretty hard to avoid. the bit I'm using, that round bit, I'm going to have to go back in. I'm going to go back in now with this pointy one and try and square these corners a little bit, because the wrench will fit in there now, but it doesn't turn a whole lot, and I think I may not be able to get enough clearance down low. So I'm going to cut into here a little bit. Tomorrow I'll get some files. So I opened up this other side here. This was the side that was really small. Where I'm at now is, not only do I have to open this up wide enough to get a wrench in there, which I did, but when this bolt is in here, I need to create clearance to get this wrench back out again. Which means I've got to take some more metal off of here so that I can get the wrench out. Now, if I don't use the ratcheting wrench, you may be asking, well, why not just use an open-end wrench? But the problem with the open-end wrench is, when compared to the ratcheting wrench, it is actually wider. So if I use the open end, I need to create more width. If I use the ratchet, I need to create more height. So no matter what way I do it, I have problems. And the reason why I'm going with raising the height rather than the width is because these nuts are right here. And I just want to stay away from them. So it's not going to hurt me to take a couple more millimeters of height out of this. That's still a pretty beefy piece of metal there. Okay, so now what I have to determine is how much thread sticking out of this hole is going to be enough so that I can get the nut, the washer, and the lock washer on here. So what I've done is measured all these pieces. We've got, here's a tip for cleaning your calipers, by the way, if you don't know it. So run it on a piece of paper to make sure you're zeroed out. So I've measured the washer. I got basically 2.1 millimeters. Lock washer, 2.5. And the nut on this side is about 6.15. Add those three numbers up, we get 10.75. I've rounded up to 11. And what I'm going to do is add another millimeter to that. So I'm going to call my distance sticking out, the distance of the stud when it's coming out through this plate, I want to be 12 millimeters. So that is going to give me, that should give me enough room that when this is assembled, I have just about a thread or so sticking out from the top of this nut. I want enough sticking out that, you know, just that I'm sure that I got a good grip on there. The last thread is sometimes a little bit, you don't want to trust that very final thread. So I want it to be down into the next thread. So right now I'm going with 12 millimeters. I might actually make that a little bigger. But here's how we can, here's how I've done that. I've taken two other nuts and I put them on this bolt. And now I'm making a measuring device now. I'm just using this to see how much thread is sticking up. Okay, so I'm using my digital calipers up against the side of the housing. Straight down on the bolt. That gives me a little over 12 millimeters. Is that going to be enough? Well, here's what we can do. I can't put the lock washer on there since it's split and spread. That's not going to give me an accurate measurement. So I'll put the washer on here. Oh, before I do that, I'm going to tighten these two nuts so that they don't move. I'll measure this again. $12.25. Okay, that's good. So now I'm going to put this washer on. I'm going to put the nut on. And then I'm going to need 2.5 millimeters more, because that's what this lock washer is going to take up when it's on there. So now I'm going to do my best to measure this here. And that's showing me like 3.5. So that'll give a millimeter left over. So yeah, I might actually want a little bit more thread sticking out. Then what I'll do when I finally determine the exact height on this, I need to have enough clearance to get this wrench out. So the wrench measures 9.4 millimeters. And the clearance that I have right now is about 6.7. Okay, so 37 to 260, something like that. Anyway, I'll do the math and make sure I got the right numbers. So anyway, it's going to be about 2.5 millimeters or so that are going to come off of here. But not only do I have to get the height, but because of these rounded corners, it's going to be too hard for me to cut square corners. So I'm just going to cut round corners, and that's going to mean is, you see here, if I put this wrench in pretty good, press it up against the top, and then come to pull it out, you're going to see it, because of the corners, it's going to ride down. So this wrench pushes even further down. So I need to take these rounded corners out. Rather than square them, I can do two things. Maybe I can take my pointy Dremel bit, like I did yesterday. I squared this corner up better with this pointed cutter. I could take the pointed cutter in there and try and square the corners more, or I could just bevel this cut a little bit. So if I slant the sides up towards the top, I don't have to worry. It'll be easier to make a clean rounded corner than it will be to make a clean square corner, right? So it's going to look a little better if I make it rounded. So I need to take off approximately 2.5 millimeters here, and I need to flare this out so that when there's enough clearance that this part of the ratchet can fit right up against the top. You see, it doesn't fit up against the top. All right, so I'll need to flare this out. I'm going to flare this out at the top on both sides and take a little bit more off so that I can get this wrench in and out, and I have no more thread sticking out than I really need. And I'll take a real good measurement of, I want to be able to get down into my first full thread. So not this thin thing on the top, this next thread here. So that's approximately 1.5 millimeters. Okay, so I'll take all that into account, and I'll find out just how much I need to stick out here so that when I'm done, I've taken off as little metal as I can, but I still have enough stud to make a nice secure grip. Then the other thing I'll have to do is I'll have to put these studs, when I put these studs into the motor, I'll have to measure how much is sticking out. Right, so I'll have to do that. If it's if this doesn't go in enough to take up that exact space, I'll have too much bolt. If the hole is deeper, I'll have to make sure that I don't screw the threads all the way in. There's going to be plenty of thread in there that they don't have to bottom out on the bottom of the case. That case depth is arbitrary. One could be 5 millimeters different than the other one. They don't need to touch bottom. So that's where I am at now. I'm going to shut this camera off, check and double check all my math, add in this, add in tolerance for the threads here, and come up with a final measurement on this stud. And then I'll be able to cut this to the right size so that I can get this wrench in and out to assemble this piece. So I've rounded these measurements up to 11. I'm going to add 2 more. I want 13 millimeters sticking out on this stud here when measured in this housing. Then from there, I'll know how much I have to take off, about 3 millimeters, to get clearance for my wrench. I've readjusted my bolt depth gauge measuring device here. So I need to figure out where I'm at right now. So holding this in against the bottom there, I need to measure this distance. 5.8. I'm going to try and measure it in a couple places because I'm sure that top cut is not exactly straight. Neither is the end of the bolt. 5.6. 5.7. All right. Let's calculate that smaller than it is. I'll call it 5.6. And then I need to add the measurement of this here. I think it's 9.3. 9.35. So the width of this wrench is 9.35. I have 5.6 clearance now. So I need 3.75 millimeters more to get the wrench in and out once that stud is in there. So there's about 4.5 millimeters of clearance here, which will be enough room for my 2.5 millimeter lock washer added to this, and will still leave me 2 millimeters of stud sticking out to make sure that I have at least one solid thread on top of the nut. That gives me about 5.8, and I need 9.35. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to take off about 3.5 to 3.25 millimeters. So as usual, I'll take off a little at a time. Okay, so that's the plan. Also, if you have mechanics gloves, wear them. Ow! Wear them because these steel splinters are not fun. I can't tell you how many I pulled out of my fingers since starting this. All right, I'm just about there now. I can squeak it in, but depending on how the stud fits, when it's all on the engine, I might need a little bit more clearance. So I took this pointed bit and I used it to get in the corners here. And then when I was just about there, I switched back to this barrel-sided one to clean it up a little bit. So I'm just going to run this across here a few more times until I can get this wrench out a little bit easier, and I'm going to call that side done. If you want to start building a motorized bike at breakfast and be riding by lunchtime, you can do that, but you're going to want to skip all of this. There are some engines where the rear ones are 6 and the front are 8. That's an option. That would negate all this customizing of this bracket. But you need to have patience. This is not a 3-hour build, and off you go. I'm trying to take off any unevenness here by hitting them a little bit and then just by moving the bit a lot to try and even it out. I'm going to have to finish that with a file, but just try and get most of it now with the Dremel. Press that bolt, press that in. The wrench goes. The wrench goes in. Let's see if we can see how much clearance we got there. It's not very much, but it's enough. So now I'll just clean this up by hand with a file. First I'll try and straighten these sides a little bit more. This looks pretty straight. I'll try and just level it out a little bit with this Dremel, and then I'll finish up with the file. Another tip here, 2 of the nuts that came with my kit for mounting the engine, 2 of them were 6.5 millimeters thick, and 2 of them were 6.35 millimeters thick. So the ones that were smaller, I took and put on some sandpaper and just sanded them smooth. And in doing that, I got down to like 6.15 millimeters. In any event, measure the nuts you have and use the ones that are thinner. The thinner that nut is, the less metal you have to take off. All right, piece of white paper behind there so you can see the shape I ended up with. For the left side, slightly wider at the top so I can get my wrench in and out. Now I'll just do the same process for the other side, and then we can think about getting this thing painted. I've decided to file and sand down the nuts and the washers so that they're all relatively the same size, so I don't have to worry about one side to the other. And I also want to make sure that one side of each stud is filed smooth, so that when I do my measurements and make sure that my ratchet wrench gets in and out of these holes, I'll know that when it comes time for assembly that everything's going to fit. Okay, so I did the other side. It's not exactly the same as the other side, but generally the same shape. This was definitely the most time-consuming part of this operation. Here was trying to get this all cut exactly smooth and all. But anyway, relatively the same shape. This side, the right side's a little bit wider. But I measured them with calipers. They're both the same height. As I said, I just have to get my stud in there at exactly the right height so I leave just enough room to get one full turn, one full thread out through the top of that nut. With the nuts and washers filed and sanded down to relatively the same size, I've got the studs temporarily secured in here so I can measure. I remember from the math I did before, I need 13 millimeters of stud sticking out. So I'm using my digital calipers. All right, I got 13.03 millimeters there. And you'll remember that I need to have 2.5 millimeters for my lock washer. I can't put that on now because it's split and spread out, right? It's not going to sit flat in there. So I need 2.5 for this, and I need 2 more millimeters of thread sticking out so that I get one complete turn of the nut. I mean, one complete set of thread sticking out past the nut. That measured 4.4. It's going to be close enough anyway, but whoops. 4.35. That's still pretty much going to be enough. 13.43 on the calipers. And .56 sticking out. And the most important part of this, so I have to be sure that I can get the wrench in and out, but also be able to ratchet. So I can get that in and out and ratchet it. This side in, and it'll ratchet and back out again. So next time we'll assemble this to the motor and we'll go on from there. I got to get this painted first, but once this is on the motor, we can really start to speed things up. See you next time.